for hypertrophy training, the mind-muscle connection is actually very important because you want to make sure you're stimulating the right area. Now, when you do an exercise, like the command that you run from your brain is actually very important, because let's say the command you run from your brain is lift. What your body will do is going to recruit all available muscles to get the job done, just to move that weight from A to B. Now what you want to actually be thinking about is contract. Now when you think about contract, you're still going to move the weight from A to B, but you're going to focus on exactly that target area that's going to accomplish that. So let's say you're training your biceps. If you think lift, you might actually think about, you might use your shoulders and you might use momentum, and your body's going to try to get that weight from A to B. If on the other hand you think contract, you're going to contract your biceps, you're still going to get the weight from A to B, but you're going to focus a lot more of that tension onto that area. And the other thing that happens as well with the mind-muscle connection, what I tend to do a lot of times is actually restrict the range of motion to what I call the sweet spot for that particular exercise. So every exercise will have a sweet spot. So some movements, the most tension will occur in the middle position. Other movements, you're going to get the most tension near the top of the range, and then you have other movements where you get the most tension near the bottom. So when you focus on contracting the muscle, you'll naturally regulate your range of motion to that point where you're getting the most amount of muscle tension. So if I think, let's say I'm doing a barbell curl for my biceps, if I think about contracting the muscle, I'll be working more that middle range and focusing on squeezing it through that range. If I'm doing a movement, for example, where there's more tension at the top, I'll naturally focus my range more within that top range because I'm focusing on contracting the muscle. So I'll naturally keep it within that range where the muscle is most under tension. If I'm doing a movement, for example, where the muscle is being stretched, I'll typically keep the movement more near the bottom because that's when I feel the most tension. So if you look at a lot of pro bodybuilders train, you can actually see their mind is in the muscle. They're not focusing on lifting the weight, they're actually focusing on contracting the muscle, and they tend to restrict their range within that optimal point, that sweet spot. Now the thing to note here is contraction and mind-muscle connection doesn't necessarily mean deliberately or excessively slowing the movement down. It just means focusing on contraction. You can do an explosive movement and still focus on contraction and still restrict the movement to that point where the tension's optimal. So that's kind of my take on mind-muscle contraction.